Starting out of a small town in rural Nebraska, Big Iron has become the trusted choice in online equipment, real estate, livestock, transportation, and classic car auctions in North America. And their mission is to be the trusted choice in all those things and more by putting the customer first. Good evening and welcome to Rural America Live. I'm John Jenkinson, your host. Diversified agriculture, business services, and rural community development have been the hallmarks of Big Iron Auction and Realty, and its founders who are joining me here tonight. A big welcome to brothers Mark and Ron Stock, who are also the founders and the co-CEOs of Big Iron Auctions, and Stock started out as Stock Auctions. So, gentlemen, welcome to the program. Good to have you here. Mark, I want to start with you. Tell us a little bit about Mark Stock and how you got to this point.
Well, first of all, John, we've known each other forever, so
yes,
it's a pleasure sitting here and this exciting. A little bit about myself. Obviously, Ron and Mark brothers, but we have 5 sisters and grew up on a farm in rural Nebraska. Went to a nice small town public school, and back in the early 80s when the economy wasn't real good, Dad said, you guys might have to figure something else out to do because I don't know if there's enough money in agriculture to make you live in farming. So Ron went to auction school and started having a few sales, and then I come in to help and join with that effort, and started with household auctions, worked our way up to some for machinery sales, started really working hard and diligently to do all the work for the sellers that we were working for in terms of getting the equipment ready to sell. And we've had a lot of wonderful people along the way, but I'm excited to be in this business with my wife and my 4 kids, and it's been a wonderful run, and we're looking for many more years to continue.
Very good. Ron, what about yourself? He said that you kind of initiated all of this a little bit.
Well, that wouldn't be fair to say that, but I'm the oldest of 7 children. 5 sisters. I've been married to my wife, Kristen, for 30 wonderful years. And Mark's my favorite brother.
Good. And Kristen's watching tonight, right?
Yes. Hi,
okay. Okay. I figured you want to say hi to her. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Sure appreciate it. Ron, what made you guys just decide to, okay, it's time to get into the auction business? What was the catalyst that moved you to that point?
You know, it really wasn't anything too scientific. Back in the 80s, you remember, John, how bad the farm economy was back then? If you look in the Midwest Messenger, there'd be 75 to 100 auctions on a Saturday. And auctions were the great American pastime at that time. So on a Saturday, we'd get our work done, and we'd jump in a car with our dad, and we'd go to an auction. There was an auction, any direction you wanted to go, there was an auction. So a lot of the young men, mostly young men, some young ladies, were going to auction school. So a couple of friends of mine were going to auction school, and I said, I'll ride along with you and go to auction school.
Very good. Okay, so if you could go back and explain a little bit what the early auctions were like that you started, because it was ag and land, right?
Yes.
Or real estate.
We've always sold land. That's something that people are surprised by. I'll see somebody at a farm show and they'll say, Big Iron is finally starting to sell land. And I told my wife that was going to be a great idea. And I say, we've been selling land since the beginning, but the equipment side of the company, people buy a lot more tractors than they do farms. But we started selling land from the very beginning back in the 80s when it was terribly hard to sell a farm. And we did a lot of household auctions. So there's nothing about salt and pepper shakers that me and him don't know about.
Okay. All right, Mark, humble beginnings. I've been to your office back when we met, 15, 18 years ago, whatever it was. Very humble beginnings, but now look at you guys. You are nationwide and even global wide now with the internet. So what was the transition like going from a small, humble beginning to where you're at now, covering multiple states?
Well, it kind of started, when we started doing these auctions across state lines, it started from a relative of ours who said, you guys really need to be broadcasting your auctions over the internet in real time. He was a younger guy, he was a computer programmer, and he said, just let me start working on some programming. Well, unfortunately, he got killed in a car accident. And we took his idea several months later to some universities, to their computer engineering schools, and we asked if they would help us draft some kind of software and technology, and it morphed into being able to broadcast an auction in real time over the internet. In fact, the very first sale that we did was for Omaha Public Power District, believe it or not, in Omaha, Nebraska, in May of 2001. We actually had some pretty good-sized high school kids with these spools of cable. They were following the back of our sound hut because it was plugged into a laptop computer because nobody had wireless anything back then. And we were broadcasting the auction with a camera over the internet as we were selling digger derrick trucks and stuff for OPPD. And that was the very first experience that we had with it. And it kind of morphed from there as we started having sales in rural America. We were putting up tents and putting monitors in these auctions so people could actually see what the people that were staying home or in their office were watching online. And more people were getting online all the time, and it slowly developed into trying at a timed-only event later on in 2009.
Now, our producer Ashley had a great question earlier in the evening when we were talking about all of this. If people were able to bid at that time then, is that right? Even in the very infancy of the internet? Correct.
There was nobody broadcasting an auction over the internet in 2001, but our company. And people could dial up, they could watch, they could click the bid button, and it would flash on a screen right in front of the auctioneer, and they were participating in an auction from that platform. And so yeah, it was definitely early on. It was the pioneering of the internet in the auction space.
Back them days, if I could add,
sure.
Mark and John, we'd be in the auction topper, and you'd have the clerk sitting beside you, which was one of our wives, and then we'd have another person sitting beside our wife, and they were watching the internet, from the dial-up. And we'd be in the auction topper going, $35,000 down, $45,000, $45,000. Yep, internet's in. And the crowd would go, internet's in? What in the world is going on here? And we had to set up the tent and educate people that the internet, we used to make the statement, internet's here to stay. And so that was some vivid memories of that.
That's just incredible. You really had some foresight in all of this, and look to what it's grown now. It continues to keep growing, and the business just keeps building. And I want to ask both of you, is that a surprise to look back and see how far this has progressed now?
It is to me. People say all the time, did you ever think this would get that big? I don't know about you, Mark, but I never really took the time to think about how big this thing could be. All it is about doing every job perfect. And I used to always say at the traditional auctions, get everybody around before the sale and build a consensus and tell everybody in yellow, let's have a great auction. And if we never have another auction again, and this is our last one, we can always say our last auction went great. So for me, it's always about doing the very best job you can on each auction, and that's still our philosophy.
That's because you were growing up rural. That's a lot that has to do with that. So now that everything is there more business now online than there is in the open outcry at this point?
Well, that's all we do in our business is the online platform. We moved away from the open outcry back in 2016 just because the crowd size was so much larger. In fact, 688,000 different unique IP addresses visit the Big Iron website every month. So that's a 2022 year stat that just shocks us. I mean, 688,000 different IP addresses are monitoring the items that are selling on Big Iron every month. So when you have that size of an audience, you can't get that many people at an open outcry sale. And it's convenient for them because they know exactly when the item is going to sell, and they can watch that item close out, whether they're sitting in the line at the elevator in their truck or whether they're running their planter back and forth on auto steer. Maybe they're getting their tooth fixed at the dentist, because we've had stores where people call me, yeah, I bought that in the dental's chair. So, it's convenient, which is number one, in my opinion, one of the reasons why people like the service as well. It is liked.
So does a lot of this equipment then sell locally, or is it just all over the world?
The average piece of machinery sold on Big Iron travels more than 305 miles.
Wow.
So that's the average of I think there was 107,000 items sold last year in 2022 on Big Iron. And the average of all the miles traveled comes out to 305 miles.
My goodness. So is there a certain classification of volumes that you see when equipment sells like that, when you're having these auctions that travels that far?
Everything's traveling. Right now, with the scarcity of equipment and the way the internet equalizes everything, I know organic farming right now is getting a lot of interest in. A gentleman just called the other day, I got a 6-row cultivator. Nobody wants a 6-row cultivator in his space. Well, the organic farmers are all trying to find cultivators. And they'll travel, get on a truck, and they'll go 600, 700, 800 miles to somebody that needs that particular piece of machinery. So everything right now is in great demand. I don't know of anything that isn't. We just had a retirement sale last week for a gentleman. He had 48 pieces. And of his 48 pieces, 15 of the items that he had purchased within the last 10 years sold for more money than what he had paid for them. So that equipment is so scarce right now, people are looking, no matter where they can find it, they're going to the auction to buy it because they need it.
Well, and you know I collect tractors and I'm into antique farm machinery.
We do.
Exactly. We were talking about 806s earlier.
Yes.
So it goes back to, I'm just amazed at what this used machinery and used truck, these trucks now that may not have to have DEF, or it's not the Tier 4 engines, or maybe aren't electronic, maybe mechanical. I'm just amazed at what these prices are bringing now.
Yeah,
Tell them about that truck that just sold.
Today, a 1999 Peterbilt cab-over sells for $55,500 on today's online auction that just concluded a couple hours before.
Wow.
The gentleman was hoping he'd get $9,000 or $10,000 for this truck, but there were people bidding on this truck from all over the United States. Trucks are really, really hot right now, and to the reason why you're talking about some of these old-time collector trucks where you don't have to e-logs and everything like that, because people want that in their operation. It's just phenomenal what we're seeing going on in the equipment market today.
You know, we were talking about how far this equipment travels. It reminds me of the story you were telling me about your 2388 that you bought. You bought it on Big Iron even.
Yeah, I bought a 2388 in Arkansas and ended up being a good machine. And you got a 2388 also, don't you?
Yep, sure do. So it's amazing now what the World Wide Web has done. What's the biggest question that you get from people when they start looking into this? What's their biggest concern? What do they ask?
One of the questions I hear is, do I have to, as a seller, do I have to own a computer to sell equipment on Big Iron? And I say, no, you don't. You have to have a computer to buy it. If you call your cell phone a computer, you have to have a computer to buy it, but you can bid from your phone. In fact, a majority of the bids are coming from the cell phone now. So that's one of my top questions I hear.
And as far as buyers, early on in the start of the internet process, they all wanted a lot of information because, to get the bidders comfortable with buying something that they're not physically setting eyes on or touching, we had to work really hard to provide them with a lot of details.
Yes.
And that was a lot of pictures of not only everything that was good about it, but all the pictures and information that was bad. And everything on the Big Iron website that has a motor that will start and run has a video of that. And that makes those bidders and buyers comfortable, and a confident bidder usually will spend more money. And that's our goal. Our ultimate goal is to make sure we find the valued bidders. The marketing department at Big Iron is second to none, okay? They will find people that are looking specifically for the item that you're selling. They know how to do it. They know how to use SEO and SEM and all those fancy meta tags and everything that you and I and maybe your viewing audience don't understand, but we have experts that understand all of that stuff. They find those handful of people that want to buy that specific machine, and then we provide them and arm them with enough information so they can make an educated decision and buy that to be an end user. That's where the secret is. Find the end users.
Well, I will tell you that's one of the things that I've always enjoyed, and I have purchased equipment from Big Iron.
Thank you.
I've got it in the yard. And I will tell you, one of the things that I really, really appreciate about Big Iron is the fact that I can go on there and there's loads of pictures. There'll be 25 to 44 pictures. It's like I'm actually there looking at it. And I think that provides a level of confidence. I think it provides a level of trust. Because, and I hope my wife isn't watching, but I'm always looking for the next antique tractor.
Right.
But you know what I'm talking about. And,
Sure.
and you brought up something earlier, Mark, that you actually show, okay, engine's got an oil leak. Well, it's better to be honest because let's face it, all of us in rural America, we base everything we do on honesty and trust with each other. And that's one of the things that you folks exude very well on your website.
Well, if you don't tell the bidders what the machine is like, they're going to find out what it's like, and you're going to hear about it later anyway. So let's, the line in that movie that says you can't handle the truth, well, we just change the words and say you can handle the truth. The public can handle the truth, and they'll reward you for your honesty. I mean, we're farm kids. I don't want to buy something somewhere, show up and look at it and be pleasantly or unpleasant. I don't want to be unpleasantly surprised. I want to be surprised that, my God, this is even better described than what I would have described it myself. So that's what we expect out of our reps. That's what we expect out of everybody in our business and our operation. And I think the bidders and the buyers appreciate it as well.
Did you have something you wanted to add?
Just the same, you can't take too many pictures, and we tell our reps, take pictures of the bad stuff. 806s. You show every 806 out there has an oil leak. Take a picture of the oil leak, and there'll be 5 bidders that say, I can fix that oil leak. And it rewards the seller with taking pictures and being honest with them.
Yep. Very well put. The Big Iron customer service line right now is taking calls during this show. If you want to know that number, here it is, 531-541-6650. You can also send an email to this address, savemydate@bigiron.com. And before we go to break, we're going to open our phone lines. That phone number is toll-free, 877-731-6733. And Big Iron Auctions and Realty is giving away coolers packed with some pretty cool swag to 2 lucky on-air callers tonight. And it might be you. So pick up the phone right now. Give us a call. We'd love to hear your questions. These 2 fine gentlemen will answer your questions. Here's the phone number again, 877-731-6733. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to Rural America Live with Big Iron Auctions and Realty. Here with me tonight are the 2 co-founders and CEOs, Mark and Ron Stock, and they're ready to take your calls. Here's the phone number, 877-731-6733. And you could be one of 2 lucky on-air callers tonight who will win a free cooler filled with swag. All you have to do is pick up the phone and give us a call right now. And again, 877-731-6733. You guys have held hundreds of auctions. So let's back up here for just a moment and take a bigger look at retirement auctions, because I know some people right now that have talked about retirement. I mean, look where the farm economy has been. Mm-hmm. This is providing an opportunity. So Ron, I want to start with you. What advice do you give anybody that's viewing tonight, or a farmer who says, you know what, I'm ready to let the next generation take over?
I'd say, depending on your situation, as far as economically, financially, you're making a very sound decision. Equipment has never sold this high in my lifetime. If you all remember, about 10, 11 years ago, the corn spiked up to $8 a bushel in December, and the farm machinery stayed high for about 2 years. And the farmland stayed high for about 2 years, and then it went down. And there's a lot of people, John calling us up going, I'm only 57. Is it crazy for me to retire? And it's just about your exit strategy. There's a lot of 57, 67, 77, 87-year-old farmers retiring. And I can't tell if it's your particular time to retire, but I can tell you this, you're never going to sell your machinery for any higher price that I've ever seen than you are on Big Iron today.
Mark, I know that you folks have weekly sales. You've got Wednesday sales. Break this down for us here for just a moment then. What warrants having just a one-day sale? What's the benefits? What are other ways to go if you have maybe just a few items? Maybe you've got a whole fleet. How does this work? What is your advice?
Well, our Wednesday sales were originally started for the people that just had a handful of items. And then a couple people that wanted to have a full retirement sale were piggybacking on those Wednesday sales. But we have been now conducting auctions Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday on Big Iron. And if you want to have your own special online auction event where it just features your items, we can do that for you. We've had several of them in the last 2 weeks. So depending on your particular situation, some people still want to put it on a Wednesday sale because that's what they're used to doing, because that is that's the way we started in 2009 with a Wednesday auction once a month, and after a couple months, twice a month, and after a couple months, it was every Wednesday. It kind of morphed that way. But depending on the size of the sale that you have and the pieces that you have, we can build a special catered program that's designed to fulfill whatever goals you as a seller have. So any day is a good day to sell on Big Iron because of the large viewing audience.
You know, I've watched some ground sell back in Kansas, where I'm from, here recently. For an instance, Wichita County, I saw some dry land sell for about $6,000 an acre. Over in Seward County, some land just recently sold as much as $8,500 an acre. And there's some being offered, hey, we want to come in and buy your land for $10,000 an acre. This land market's pretty hot right now. And so when it comes to land sales, because that's, like you were mentioning earlier, that's what you folks specialize in. What's your advice there?
It's almost identical to the advice on the equipment. I've never seen land sell this high. It's up 20 to 30% across the board in the last 18 months, and that's in every single state, John. That's in Illinois, that's in Indiana, that's in Kansas, that's in South Dakota, that's in Nebraska and Colorado. It's all relevant. Whatever your farm was worth a year and a half ago, take it times 30% more, and that's what it's bringing. It's just an incredible time if you're a seller to be selling your farm.
And what's unique about, in my opinion, what's going on right now is these folks that are coming to the auctions to participate, bid, and buy. At closing, they're not borrowing any money, John. They're coming to closing with cash. So we're selling $1.5 million, $2.5 million quarters of ground, and they're not borrowing any money. And Ron just sold a big ranch in western Nebraska for $23.5 million. And those folks that were bidding and buying on that were coming to those events without having to lever or borrow too much money. So there's just a lot of cash in the country right now because we've had really good years of commodities. And when you're selling corn for $7 a bushel and beans for $13, $14, and $15 a bushel, and wheat for $9, $10, and $11 a bushel, and even 12, I think, if you held on a little bit, this last summer, they've got the money to write out checks for them. So that's not only working well in the land, but it's also working in the machinery market as well.
You know, you guys have gone the extra mile. What really resonated with me is when we were visiting earlier before we went on the air tonight, of how when you got started, you bought power washers, you went in, you cleaned up the equipment, you prepped everything and got it ready to go. That's really admirable. So it shows that you go the extra mile for everybody that you're involved with. There's a lot to be said for that. So what about your knowledge? Where do we go from here when we start talking about some of these amazing land prices, some of these amazing equipment prices? Looking down the road, do you see an end to this at some point? If somebody, let's face it, it may not last forever, but right now, rural America and agriculture seems to be in much better shape than we were in the 80s, even though the interest rates are starting to climb a little.
Yeah, and right now the market is extremely hot for land and machinery. And your point is well taken. We do not know when this is going to stop. Inputs they are increasing, so that takes the top off of that margin. We're farmers, so we do our break-evens every year just like everybody else does. I mean, I know exactly what my cost per bushel of corn is going to be this year, just like I did last year. So we follow that market very, very close, and we follow how that all works out. I'm pretty confident, though, that the first half of next year, the machinery market's going to remain very, very good because of everybody deferring their income to beat Uncle Sam into 2023. So you got all these folks that did sell a couple 100,000 bushels of corn or beans, whatever it was. And if they're sitting on $1 million and they deferred half of that into 23 because they can, they still got $500,000 to invest in some new machinery or make a purchase on some additional farmland. So I think that's going to stay pretty good here for the first half. What happens beyond that depends on when people have to start digging into the banks and, now you're operating money at 7.5%, 8% interest. That's going to have some kind of an effect sooner than later.
Yep, good point. I've always been on the outside looking in at Big Iron and when it used to be stock auction, okay? But I knew you guys real well, known you for many, many years, but from the outside looking in, there was always this culture, there was always this mindset within your organization that just seemed to be based on something. I want to ask you, Ron, what influenced that culture, if I may use that term, for Big Iron?
It's because we're farmers. You know, we're farmers. We know how farmers want to be treated because we know how we want to be treated. And I tell you, you will not run into a more intelligent bunch of people than farmers. I always love it when we go to the big cities and somebody alludes to the fact that that guy's just a farmer and they don't know we're farmers. And I guarantee you put a farmer up against anybody in the big city, as far as intellect goes, the farmer's going to win. Farmers are incredibly intelligent, hardworking, and they want to be told the truth too. And they want to be treated with respect. And so we're farmers. It's real simple. We know how farmers want to be treated.
Yep.
Well, farmers, they're marketers, they're mechanics, they're chemists, they're accountants, they're all of those and then some. They're husbands, they're members of their school board, you know? They do all of those things, and so it's not just a one facet type of a mindset to be a farmer. If something breaks, you got to figure out a way to fix it, you know? And you have to put all that stuff together in one package. So farmers, they know what they're doing, right? The smartest population, smartest generation. It's fun working with farmers. I love sitting in coffee shops, listening to farmers tell their stories. It's an exciting time when you have those opportunities to meet those folks.
Absolutely. Our toll-free number is 877-731-6733. We would certainly like to hear from you folks. Let's go to the phone. David from Nebraska is calling in. David, thank you very much for calling in tonight. What's your question for the boys?
I have more of a comment than a question. I am a very happy retirement seller on Big Iron Auction. I had a retirement auction of 166 items on July 27th and was very, very pleased with the auction. My items went to 8 different states, ranging from Oregon and Washington State clear to Virginia on the other end of the country. And so from Minnesota to Arkansas. And so very pleased with the auction.
Any comments or questions for David?
That is not a paid advertisement, by the way, David. Thank you for calling in.
And David, thank you so much for that. Hearing comments like that from you is what inspires me every day.
David, how did you come about to know these folks?
You know, I had seen and I had watched Big Iron Auction a little bit, but the real kicker for me was my brother-in-law actually had a small retirement auction in February. It was February 18th, and he just had 18 items that he sold, and I saw the success of those items. I helped him get ready for that sale, and was very pleased with what I saw there, and especially when his twin screw truck went clear to Pennsylvania, I said, this is the way I want to sell my things too.
Thank you for your comments.
Well,
thank you very much.
Yep, David, thank you very much for the call. You know, David brings up a good point, and I want to expand on this just a little bit. And either one of you can answer this question. From the time that somebody calls and says, "Hey, I've got a combine and a tractor, I've got a tandem truck, or I've got something here to sell," or maybe they've got a whole shed full. What happens at that point? Go through the steps of how they get in contact with somebody, how that person shows up, where they come from. Go through that for just a moment to explain to our audience how this gets to be to this point.
Well, Big Iron has equipment specialists or reps that are scattered all across the United States. So when the call comes in, we find out the location of the person, and then we patch that information on over to that rep that is local to their community. Because the majority of our reps, believe it or not, they cover maybe 2 or 3 counties, so they're not very far away from most of the sellers. We've got over 300 reps now across the majority of the Midwest. And when that call comes in, that person will meet with that particular seller and go over the Big Iron selling process. Now, it usually takes no less than 6 weeks to get that item sold, because we have to take the pictures, we have to make sure everything is done the right way. We're not going to rush it, because in order to expose it to the right type of bidder, we can't rush the process. And that equipment then is, our reps do all the work. They'll clean it up if they have to. They'll take all the pictures, shoot all the videos, submit it into the office, and then it gets posted online. And then we always publish the owner's name, which is one of the #1 reasons why people use Big Iron as a buyer. They are comfortable with talking to the owner. They don't want to talk to somebody that won't give them the owner's name. They want to talk to that person specifically. That's the way I would want to do it. I don't want to talk to a representative or an agent that won't tell me who the person is or won't tell me where it's located. So that person's name is on the sale information. They'll field calls, as will the rep field the calls, and then it sells with no reserve on our bidding platform on the date that's picked. So we collect the money, we disperse the money then to that seller. The buyer comes to that seller's location to pick up the item, so the seller doesn't have to move it anywhere. We usually position the item or items by the end of their lane or by the road if there's a high traffic area, and put some signage out there so the public can see what's going on. And of course, we do all the marketing, not only locally with flyers, but also through all of the things that our marketing teams do through the SEM and the SEOs and all the internet broadcasting that they do. So that's kind of in a nutshell, but if it starts with a phone call or filling out the info or the save my date at bigiron.com email address.
Well, and one of the things that you were talking about also before we went on the air that I want to tell our audience about is that you mentioned that many of your reps are also farmers. They're also ranchers. They're from agriculture, so they get it.
Yes, they are. They live in the communities in which they serve. Their children are students in your local schools. Okay, so we pride ourselves on that. So when they're out there feeling the local economy, they know when planting season is in that part of the country. They know when harvest starts. They know when it rains. They know when it's dry. So they are part of that area, and that's one of the reasons why people are so comfortable with Big Iron, because we are your local area rep.
If you don't mind, share the story that you were telling me about the grain cart that sold. That was fascinating.
Well, the very first Big Iron auction we had was, as a result of when we were having auctions back in the early 2000s, we were averaging 3.5 auctions every week. But when 2008 come about, ethanol was introduced, so the price of corn doubled. And a lot of people weren't retiring because they had never made so much money, they were farming some more. So our auctions went to like 3.5 auctions a month for a period of time. But we always had people calling us up and saying, I want to sell a couple items. When are you going to have a sale in the area here? Because I want to move some of this equipment that I'm no longer using. Well, we couldn't really put that together, so we talked about, let's have a timed auction only. And one of the items that was on this sale was from one of our neighbors who had a UFT grain cart parked by the end of the road.
Yep.
And this grain cart, he had it advertised with a for sale sign on it for quite some time, 3 or 4 months. And I pulled in to see him. I said, would you consider selling that grain cart on this test?
Online auction.
On this test auction, because we had no idea how it was going to work. And he says, well, I don't know, it's been sitting there for a while, and I was thinking about just pulling it to the scrapyard, taking the tires off, because they're worth at least $150, and the rest is probably worth $200 in scrap. He says, what do you think it'll bring? And I said, well, it's a no reserve sale. It might not get a bid for all I know. I don't know. He says, well, I know you guys. You probably do okay. We'll see what happens. It sells on bigiron.com, the very first, bigiron.com, for $2,100 to a buyer in Texas. There were 890 people registered on that particular sale with 21 total items, okay? 21 total items. And so I called up that seller and I said, hey, did you see what your grain cart brought? He says, no, I don't even have a computer. And I said, it brought $2,100. And he says, oh, no, it did not. Somebody's jerking with you. Somebody was in the state pen playing around on a computer. And I laughed and I thought that was funny. And I said, well, why don't I call up this buyer and find out what's going on. So I called him up. He says, oh my gosh, it's absolutely perfect what we've been looking for, because the flighting was shot. We advertised it. The flighting was as smooth you could shave with it. He says, we're going to cut that flighting off. We're going to put a real non-aggressive flighting in it, because we're going to use that grain cart after we customize it to be a seed tender for our big wheat drills in Texas. And he shows up a couple days later with a 3/4 ton dually pickup. And I don't know how many of your viewers and your listeners have ever pulled a single axle grain cart down the road. When you go about 30 miles an hour, it kind of gets that lope. And I said, boy, that's going to be a long trip home. He says, no, it won't. He says, once you get past 35 miles an hour, that lope comes right up. So apparently he made it home because I called him a couple days later. But that was the first experience that we had with Big Iron, and we had 890 people registered. So after that, we put a little ad in a couple papers that said, if you want to know more about selling your equipment online on a product we call bigiron.com, come to this informational meeting. And we did several in towns around, and they were wall-to-wall packed, crowds full of people, because they were all eager to find out how it worked, and it's been taken off ever since then.
If I could add something to that, I remember Mark and I, we had that corner, we had that sale at the 6 Mile corner west of St. Ed, and I remember we were driving back into town, and I remember the hair going up in the back of my neck, looking at Mark going, this thing's going to work.
Little did you know at the time.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Well, the Big Iron customer service phone line is taking calls during the show. The number is 531-541-6650. You can also send an email to savemydate@bigiron.com. We need to pause for another quick break, but those phone lines are open, so call in with your questions. We want to hear from you. 877-731-6733. We still have more to come, so stay with us. We'll be right back.
The stories of farm families and small towns are the stories of rural America. They deserve to be memorialized and shared with the world. These legacies reveal a rich history and show us they are worth preserving. They show us all what's still possible. Share Your Legacy is a program produced by Big Iron Auctions. We're traveling the country in search of families and communities who have stories to tell. Families who worked the land, families who supported their towns, families who gave thanks to God, families whose legacies still impact their communities today. Join us as we visit with the Thompsons in Stewart, Nebraska, whose homestead goes back to 1918. Travel with us to meet the Roberts family in Jeffersonville, Georgia, who have 31 family members running their family farm. Share Your Legacy finds stories like these and presents them like never before. Discover 100-year-old machinery that still has an impact on one Iowa farm, and see what is perhaps the oldest tractor in America still in use, located in Lubbock, Texas. Water towers, town squares, grain elevators, center pivots, fishing holes, and six-man football all serve as backdrops for these profoundly human stories of hard work, devotion, and perseverance. Tune in to Machine Repeat every Saturday on RFD TV to catch new features, and visit bigiron.com to nominate stories to be showcased by the Share Your Legacy program.
And welcome back to Rural America Live with Big Iron Auctions and Realty. We still have one cooler to give away to a lucky on-air caller, so pick up the phone right now and dial this number, 877-731-6733. You know, just watching that, man, that'll make the hair stand up on the back of your neck. That's really awesome. It's obvious, and I can tell this, we're just with visiting with you guys tonight, but I've known this for quite some time, and I think it's obvious to David, who called in earlier. You guys have a real passion for this, and it shows that your passion is in this legacy individuals. Mark, if you could talk to that just a little bit and explain to our audience what that's all about and what it means to you and why you're so passionate about this.
Well, I think we've been blessed because of the profession that we're in. We've had the opportunity to meet so many people all across the country, and we get to help a lot of these folks celebrate their life's work. And in so doing, and talking to the family and the friends of the people that we're having these auctions for, we learn things about these individuals that are very unique and very special to their communities. And most farmers are very humble people, so they don't, brag about all the things that they have done. But the Share Your Legacy show that we're putting together is designed to help highlight all those things that those specific individuals have done in the area. So just in this last year on Big Iron, we had over 8,000 different sellers. And of those 8,000 different sellers, we have identified so many of those folks that have done something very unique to their community. Maybe they've been on the rural fire department for 42 years in addition to farming and raising their families. We've got stories of people that have been professionals as being dentists, and they also have a purebred herd of livestock, okay? So, and they have a unique story about how they do that. And we have all these unique stories that are really important to me, because I think we have a voice with the Big Iron website because of the viewers that are out there and the number of people that are watching it, to help showcase all of those stories to whoever is interested. And we want to take this opportunity to do that for those folks all across America.
John, if I might add something,
Sure.
Mark Stock years ago on our traditional auctions, he would take a camera when there weren't cameras, and he would videotape the seller talking about, he would take a break from the sale, and he would take a minute and he would do a video of the seller talking about his equipment, had the microphone with his family, and then he'd go around and take pictures. I remember Mark being on top of a grain bin, taking a video and pictures of the seller's equipment, and then he'd hand that disc to those pictures to Erica back in our home office, and Erica would make a disc, and we would put that in the packet with the seller and his family on the settlement. And to this day, we have widows all over and kids telling us that disc, that history of their dad talking about that machinery is something they made copies of, and the grandkids have it, the great-grandkids have it. A lot of times it's the only live footage of these farmers out there, and that is priceless. And so this is just a spin-off of something we've been doing all along, and a lot more detailed and a lot more intimate stories about people. But we're so lucky, like Mark said, to hear all these stories. It's amazing, some of the characters that are out there.
Oh,
and
yeah.
we get to see all that, and you folks don't. And we want to share that with you, with Share Your Legacy, because I'm passionate also about having you folks see those stories.
That is so awesome. Let's go to Kansas. Steve is on the line with us. Steve, good evening. I think you're lined up for a cooler now, but you also get to talk to these gentlemen. What's your question?
We was looking for a bigger tractor. We was looking for a bigger tractor in our area, and we couldn't find the right fix for what we need. We have 4 local dealers in our area in northeast Kansas here, but we couldn't find what we really wanted. And we went on Big Iron and found a retirement sale in Des Moines, picked up a MX200 from a retirement sale, and also we picked up a Kinsey 12-row planter from a local down around the Junction City area, and very pleased with what we got. We was looking for what we wanted, and with Big Iron, we found what we needed. Thank you.
That's awesome. I'm glad you had a great experience with it, and I like the MX tractor series myself. Go Red.
Steve, thank you very much for your call. I got to know something. You just heard from Steve. We heard from David earlier. How does it make you guys feel when you hear that?
I'm so proud of all of our reps and all the people in our offices that work so hard to market that equipment, to help those sellers achieve success in that most important part of their life, especially in the retirement spot, or when you're looking for equipment that you can't find locally. I know to be able to connect buyers and sellers together, even these long distance miles, it warms my heart, and it's all because we have quality people in all of our office locations. I couldn't be more prouder of the salespeople and all of their managers. It's a tremendous team. They do a tremendous job, and I'm so proud of them.
You guys realize by hearing this now, those comments, that Big Iron is leaving its own legacy. You realize that, right? What about your personal legacies? And I'll start with you, Mark.
Oh, I don't know if I'd look at it that way, but I'm just glad that we've had the opportunity to help people, because we all have to have a purpose.
Yep, absolutely. Ron?
Legacy and pride is 2 things we've never, as farmers, farmers don't think about legacy. They don't really think about pride. So I'm awful happy, like Mark said, with all the people at Big Iron that make the whole thing work. It's not Ron and Mark Stock. This is a group effort. This is family, friends when we first started, and now a whole bunch of people working together to make something happen. But when we hear a seller and a buyer, both happy on both ends, I mean, we've got mostly satisfied sellers in this farm economy, but if anybody's got a problem, they can call their rep, their district manager, and they're going to get treated with the respect they deserve. And we welcome the challenges and how you think we can do it better just as much as we welcome all the accolades. The accolades are out there, and quite frequent actually, but when somebody calls me and says, Ron, you know how you could make big iron better? I take the time, I clear my desk, and I start taking notes.
Yeah, that's what makes you guys who you are. And I can vouch for that knowing you as long as I've known you both. Mark, I want to go back to you here for just a moment. Is there anything that you expect, or is there anything that you see down the road as Big Iron continues to grow and continues to touch all of these lives? What's the next, no pun intended, big thing for Big Iron?
Well, with our partnership now and acquisition of Sullivan Auctioneers, that's been a huge asset so we can put these two great companies together, because we definitely are better together. And now the footprint is expanding. Just as our caller, Steve in Kansas, made reference that to find machinery, there's going to be more machinery available for the buying public, because the Big Iron and Sullivan brands are going to be selling on the same platform, offering more equipment at an absolute auction where the public establishes the price through the competition of an open, honest bidding platform than any other company in North America. So we're excited about that, and our company is growing beyond our wildest expectations, and we need more help. So we're always looking for people that love machinery, that have real estate license and are professional people. We're always looking for those folks, and they can send their resumes into us by going to the bottom of our website at bigiron.com, career opportunities. We're growing. We want to continue to grow because we know there's a lot of people out there that we would like to help.
Let's go back to the telephone. Michael in Alabama. Alabama's calling in tonight. Michael, what's your question for these gentlemen?
Hey, gentlemen, I appreciate y'all doing the show, and I just wanted to comment about the fact the pictures and then how well things are described, being able to call the owner of the equipment and be able to have a one-on-one conversation, and getting the backstory about what I was purchasing. I wanted a John Deere 4020 for my son. I was able to contact the gentleman. I got the story. He used the tractor when he was a young man, and the tractor was willed to him. I got the 4020. I couldn't be more tickled. The pictures, I got to talk to the rep. It was a very great experience. Once we got the tractor home, we wanted to get some front weights and brackets. Got back online, found that, just got that yesterday, and just a great experience. And just like you said earlier, the pictures and just being able to feel like I was made a friend to the person that I was purchasing from, which just made was an invaluable experience, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It wasn't hard. It was just easy. I felt comfortable making the purchase. I trusted the man. I trusted the pictures. And just like you said, being able to call the man and having a one-on-one conversation, he probably got tired of me calling him between the time I called. And then he was high-fiving, complimenting me, being so complimentary on making the purchase. And he was proud that I got it. So I just wanted to say, if anybody wants to make a purchase, feel at ease, and it was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Wow. You realize how many friends you're introducing now?
Unbelievable. Thank you for those comments. I'm humbled by those comments, and we just keep doing it every day and pretend it's the last sale we're ever going to have. And if it's your sale, I promise you we're going to work super, super hard on making it happen right.
That is just amazing. And it's for his son. And that's the other part of this is when a buyer and a seller get to talk one-on-one with each other. Not only do they feel more comfortable, they've made a friend, but they also find the history behind that machine. And that's sometimes just as much as valuable as the machine itself.
Absolutely.
Correct, totally. And I know we have a lot of conversations with some folks. They say, well, I'm not going to sell my machinery until I pass. I'm going to let it be somebody else's problem. But I think they're starting to understand that there is a lot that goes into the transition or the passing of the torch to the new buyer.
Yeah.
And that buyer wants that story, and that's they want that information to be part of that machine's history as well. And then that's a new heirloom that stays within that family and is passed on to their next generation. So And I think a lot of folks that are realizing that and they're scheduling their auctions right now. We've got a lot of them coming.
Speaking of that, and we've got about 4 minutes left here in the program, what about somebody that is watching and they've heard all of these comments and they're thinking about selling machinery, they're thinking about selling land? What do you have to say to them?
Well, first thing you can do is the success of any auction is giving yourself plenty of time for preparation. So get a hold of your area rep or get a hold of the number that you see flashing on this screen or save my date at bigiron.com email address. And then our reps will get in touch with you and we'll design a special personalized program that is designed just for you. And whether you got 1 or 2 items or you want to have your entire sale, we will take care of it for you with a plan that fits your desires.
Okay, very good. We're going to wind things down here pretty quick, but first of all, I'd like to get thoughts from each one of you, and Ron, I'll have you go first, sir.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. If you could have told me I could be on RFD TV with you, John, I couldn't have imagined that. I'm humbled by the whole experience. You folks here have really been kind to us and our staff and drove us around Nashville this afternoon, and we're having a great time. Really been a humbling experience, and I want to thank you for the opportunity.
Kevin's a good driver, I hear.
He's a great driver.
Okay,
He's been
good.
fantastic.
That's good. That's good. Mark?
You know, with the Big Iron process in place, and we're now having opportunities to help people sell their livestock. We're having opportunities to help people sell their classic cars, and we sell their construction equipment and their ag equipment. It's an honor to work for each and every one of the people that we've done business with, not only as the sellers, but the bidders and the buyers. And I, like Ron, am also humbled by all of this. This is definitely not what 2 small town St. Edward, Nebraska boys ever could have possibly imagined. But it was a vision and a lot of good quality people that helped make that vision come to reality. So to everybody watching that has used Big Iron as a seller, a bidder, a buyer, I can't thank you enough for trusting us.
And I got to say, you guys have a top shelf staff. I got to hand it to you, because everybody that I've ever worked with, called up to the office and visited with, met out even just at a coffee shop, just happened to be passing by. Everybody has been top shelf, and so you do an excellent job. And like you said, you're always looking for more people to join this professional team and get to wear the yellow shirt.
Yeah,
that's right.
We like to be a fun company to work for. If you're looking for, like Mark said, if you're looking to join the yellow team, give us a call. We're hiring. We're looking for bright people, and give us a call.
Okay, I got 30 seconds left, but I got to know. The 806s, you said you have 7 of them?
My dad's got 7 806s, and he still got them. They're out in the trees, some of them, but they've still got them.
I was going to ask if you're going to restore them.
You know, Mark's taking one of them on.
One of them getting restored right now, and he's got one that is original that's only got like 4,200 actual hours on it. That's pristine.
He's been saving that one.
That's pristine.
Call me, and we're gonna work on some 806. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you,
Great
John.
to visit with you.
Thank you so much.
It's an honor to be on the show with you.
Thank you.
Well, that's going to wrap things up. Thank you very much for joining us on Rural America Live. We've certainly enjoyed your calls and your viewership. We really appreciate it here on Rural America's most important network. And be sure and tune in for Market Day Report tomorrow at 8 a.m. And good night from Rural America's most important network.